This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Tonight is the Plan Commission, December 3rd. I'd like to let everybody know that this meeting is being broadcast live by Valley Media Works on Charter Channel 994, 101.9 FM, and online at valleymediaworks.org. I'd like to let everybody know the Plan Commission attempts to conduct its public hearings in a relatively informal manner within the constraints that we must deal with the issues before us in an orderly and business-like fashion. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak first, and then others, either for or against, permitted to speak once, please. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to the issue before us and avoid unnecessary repetition and be prudent with use of time. We want to make sure that we provide adequate time to review all items with equal diligence. Points of note, anybody that's got cell phones, please turn them off or to silent or other devices. If you are planning to speak tonight, please fill out one of the yellow slips in the back, and then you can just leave it up the counter up front here, and Ryan will grab that. When you speak, please introduce yourself along with your address. With that, we're at item number 1 here. We've got public hearing for recommendation, bike and pedestrian plan update. Mr. Pat Ivory.
Well, good evening. Tonight is the public hearing for the city bicycle and pedestrian plan. This plan would update the current plan that was prepared back in 2010. The plan was drafted by staff of the engineering department and community development departments, and we've worked very closely with the bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee in the preparation of this update. Leah Ness, our city's transportation engineer, and myself are the two principal staff persons that work with BPAC and that have worked on the development of the plan. I'll provide a brief overview of the plan, and then Leah will provide kind of a review of some of the key recommendations that are contained in the plan. As noted in the staff report, the Plan Commission reviewed an earlier draft of this plan back in April and then also in May, and a couple of members had several comments and suggestions on the plan. This draft includes a number of those changes based on comments that we did receive from the Plan Commission, also from input from the BPAC, the pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Commission, and also other groups and individuals that we got input on since April and May. As noted back in May, this plan is based on policies from the 2015 Comprehensive Plan that places a strong emphasis on bicycle and pedestrian modes of travel. There's 4 different chapters within the Comprehensive Plan that refer to bicycle and pedestrian modes of traffic related to the transportation chapter, parks and greenways and trails chapter, the neighborhood chapter, and then also the downtown chapter. Specific directives that are contained within those particular chapters are to improve pedestrian connections and create a continuous pedestrian system, build an interconnected bicycle route network to encourage more commuting and recreational bicycling, design neighborhood streets with bicyclists and pedestrians in mind, and enhance the ability to walk and bicycle downtown. The plan itself consists of 5 main sections, including the assessment of conditions section, the issues identification, the goals and objectives, a fairly lengthy recommendation section, and then an area section called areas of detailed study. These are 27 areas that we've identified within the city that we've done a little bit more in-depth analysis in terms of some of the concerns or issues related to pedestrians and bicyclists, and then we set forth some different possible recommendations that we would look at further when these streets are reconstructed. We could have picked more than 27. We could have had many more, but we went with this particular number. These are kind of the key areas that we felt. Areas that are not identified as a detailed study area doesn't mean that we're ignoring those areas. Most of those are addressed in the plan also. Just a little background in terms of what's happened since 2010 and kind of what our infrastructure is like within the city. We have about 370 miles of sidewalks within the city, almost 41 miles of off-street pathways. If you go back to 1990, we had about 1.5 miles of off-street pathways. So in 28 years, we've added almost 38 miles of trails within the city. We have a little over 11 miles of bike lanes, about a little over 5.5 miles of sharrows, and then a little over 1/2 mile of bike boulevards. And what we include there is Thorpe Drive and Valmont Avenue, our 2 bike boulevards. We also have a pretty extensive infrastructure and investment in tunnels and underpasses and bridges related to pedestrians and bicyclists, with 19 tunnels and underpasses and 12 bridges. Some of those are solely for pedestrians and bicyclists, and some are in combination with our street infrastructure. And there is a map in the appendix of the plan that shows the locations of where some of that infrastructure is located. Some other examples of what's happened since 2010 is that we have developed and adopted bicycle and pedestrian connection standards for new development, and that's something that this commission administers as part of your site plan review. We've installed a number of bike racks downtown and working with the Water Street bid in trying to get some bike racks installed there. We've installed 4 bicycle corrals, 2 along Water Street, 1 on Graham, and then 1 over at the library, and 2 of those were installed this year. We've installed 3 bicycle repair stations throughout the city, and also adopted bicycle parking standards, which again this commission administers as part of your site plan review. In terms of education and outreach, we've worked with the police department in developing some social media videos regarding bike safety, and those have been put out and available on our website. We've developed maps and brochures such as the Chippewa Valley bicycle map, working with a private group of individuals that have been interested in bicycling within the city. We've done a number of education and promotion events with festivals and events such as having educational booths and done bike rides and things like that, and then worked on their bicycle-friendly designation for Eau Claire. Also worked closely with the City Police Department. Leah's worked with them in terms of updating the provisions for where bicycling is allowed and not allowed on sidewalks, such as where it's not allowed in our downtown area and in our Water Street area, and then also developing the pedestrian zone signage that was recently put up this fall. And then you'll see some additional decals that will be put down on the sidewalks in the spring of next year. Also, the police department worked real closely with the neighborhood associations and business associations, and then regularly attend our BPAC committee to give us updates in terms of what's happening with the police department. There's a number of issues that have been identified in the updated plan, and we just wanted to touch upon a couple of those here. The first one is that we want to continue to try to eliminate the gaps that are in our sidewalk system and also in our bicycle route system. There's national trends where we're seeing increased accidents related to with pedestrians, pedestrian vehicle. In fact, actually increases in fatalities across the nation. Within the city of Eau Claire, we have not seen increases in fatalities, but we actually have seen a modest increase in accidents related to vehicle and pedestrians within the city. So it's kind of a little bit of a troubling trend that we're seeing both nationally and within the city. So that's something we want to try to address as we go forward. Also, increased awareness and health benefits of walking and bicycling, and then neighborhood quality in terms of being able to live in a neighborhood and be able to walk or bike to different services such as parks, schools, shopping, and those types of things. And that came out real important within our comprehensive plan. Also working with area jurisdictions, particularly our area towns, where we have the city sidewalk system that might end right where you go into a particular town, trying to do better coordination so we don't have those ends of those facilities as you go outside the city. And then finally, just continued need for further education and awareness, not only for bicyclists and pedestrians, but also for motorists. The overall vision or goal is listed in the plan. Basically, it indicates that bicycle and pedestrian plan outlines the public and private initiatives that would continue to improve and promote walking and bicycling in Eau Claire, recognizing the variety of reasons that people walk and use bicycles, such as recreation, transportation, personal health, concern for the environment, and then the costs of operating a motor vehicle. With that, I'll turn it over to Leah. She's going to touch upon some of the recommendations that are included in the plan.
Thanks, Pat. The recommendations in the plan really seek to improve the environments in which bicyclists, pedestrian, and non-motorized users of our transportation system are using. They incorporate the 6 E's, which are education, encouragement, enforcement, engineering and planning, equity, and evaluation. This is a map of the bicycle facilities on the north side of the city, and we have a south side that also I'll be showing you. The purple on the map indicates a primary or regional route. The red lines on the map indicate the neighborhood routes, and the green lines indicate the trail system. The dotted green lines are the future proposed trail system locations. The purple lines really are connecting larger areas or higher demand areas. The neighborhood routes shown in the red are linking the neighborhoods to the local parks and the school system and the neighborhood system, or the neighborhoods within the city. One of the goals of this map is to identify our existing routes and future routes that we can improve upon. And when we look at it from the engineering capital improvement process and our projects, we identify or look at these streets to see what types of improvements we can make related to a regional bicycle route or a neighborhood bicycle route. Also on this map, it's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the printed map or a map online, there are some gray areas that Pat had mentioned as further study areas, and there's 27 of them, which I'll kind of touch on a couple of topics when we get into the gaps within the sidewalk system. The bicycle network is part of the engineering and planning recommendations. This is the south side of the city. You can see the regional routes extend outside of the city limits. The neighborhood routes are connecting those park and neighborhood and school facilities. This is a regional routes map that Pat and myself and a group of other municipality representatives and city representatives have been working on for quite some time now. The lines on this map coincide with the purple lines on the bike routes map within the city's pedestrian and bicycle plan. These are the regional routes that have been identified by working with the West Central Wisconsin Regional Plan Commission Committee, and they've been working with the city of Chippewa Falls, Lake Hallie, Altoona, Eau Claire County, and Chippewa County on developing these routes that will direct visitors and also be commuting routes for people across the Chippewa Valley. The routes actually can take you from Durand to Cornell using the Chippewa River Trail and the Old Abe Trail. The goal for the city of Eau Claire is to have the routes signed within the city in 2019. Some of the other municipalities are using a phased approach and will be able to sign a couple of routes, but hopefully in the end we'll have a numbered and signed system that people can come to the Chippewa Valley and use. This is the pedestrian gaps map, which is similar to the bicycle route map, with the green being designated trail system. The dotted is future trail system. The purple on here is showing the sidewalk on each side of the streets. The red is really the area that we are focusing on, and that's identifying the gaps in the systems, sidewalk gaps and pathway gaps. In this area, you can see on the north side of town, we have the Jeffers Road. This yellowish area on the map is Jeffers Park with the ball fields, and we have a sidewalk gap system north of State Trunk Highway 312, or the North Crossing, that we don't have sidewalks to reach to this facility up here. We have the Northwest Park that doesn't have sidewalks to reach to that facility. There's a proposed trail, a proposed future trail here too, sidewalk gap system, or in the system. Also on Riverview Drive, we have a similar situation without sidewalks or a trail system along Riverview Drive. On the south side of the city, kind of the same situation along State Street after you're south of Hamilton. There's no sidewalks, it's outside of the city area, but we would like to work with the county and the townships to close those gaps in our system. Another study area and identified gap system is over on Hamilton Avenue by Robbins School, which would help expand that Safe Routes to School network to have sidewalk leading up to that school and within that neighborhood. This is a map that is included in the bicycle and pedestrian plan related to recommendations in the education and encouragement section. It's a Safe Routes to School program map. The shaded areas on the map are kind of hard to see, but each of these are elementary schools and they have identified walk zones. The green lines on those maps are safe routes within the elementary school's walk zone. In 2018, the West Central Wisconsin Regional Plan Commission worked with the City of Eau Claire and the Eau Claire School District to identify the safe routes or update the existing safe routes plan. And as a part of that, surveys were completed with parents and students. Walk audits were completed at each of the schools in the morning and the afternoon, looking at walking conditions around the school, what types of pedestrian crossing treatments are used, where pedestrian crossing guards are located, and things along that nature were analyzed and looked at. The results of this plan gave recommendations to both the school and the city on improvements that can be made within these walk zones and related to these schools. Those again were based on the 6 E's that I had talked about earlier. Recommendations of complete streets is also under the education and encouragement section of the bicycle pedestrian plan. And this past year, a team of multidisciplined staff and city council attended a national walkability conference. Looking upon completion of the conference, they identified a primary goal of adopting a complete streets policy. BPAC has also been working on a complete streets policy with the engineering department. And I guess to explain what a complete streets is, complete streets are used for everyone, and they are for everyone. They are designed and operated to enable safe access for all users. Transportation users of all ages and abilities are able to safely move along and across the street, and that would be a complete street. The walkability team identified our annual capital improvement program as a process to test a complete streets policy and put the complete streets into test. We're using it on the State Street 2019 capital improvement project. To date, using this process, we have completed walk audits, held open houses for the public, and had discussions with various groups to gather their concerns and look at what they liked and didn't like along the corridor, and identifying what needs would be needed to make State Street a complete street. Staff's using this information along with concept development and preliminary engineering checklists to move forward on the State Street project. Additional public outreach is actually going to occur starting this week related to the project, using the information that we've collected to date to provide a draft design and get additional feedback on that design and the process and the policy process. As you may have noticed earlier, it was hard to tell on the maps, but State Street was identified as one of those areas for further study, and that is one of the reasons that it was used as a complete streets policy test area. And with that, I'll turn it back to Pat to go over public input opportunities.
Thanks, Leah. Over the course of the last couple years, staff has worked with, as I mentioned, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee in trying to get public input on this draft plan, and that include having some educational booths that we did during Bike Week the last 2 years. We had a couple open houses that were held over at Volume 1. We've done some fairly extensive media coverage. Volume 1 did quite a lengthy article about the update of the bike plan and posted it on their website, and we received a number of different comments and suggestions from the public through that particular venue. We've also used our social media in terms of to get the word out on this, and our city website. We've had the draft plan posted for public comment for about the last 6 months or so. We've also met with different commissions and committee meetings over the time period. We have met with the Parks and Waterways Commission. They met on September 26th, and we got a few comments and suggestions from that commission. And the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee reviewed the final draft of this on September 18th, and they recommended approval. We also met with different departments within the city. We worked real closely with our Parks Division or Community Services Department. They've indicated a need to provide better accessibility, particularly for pedestrians, to get to the parks and then within the parks. So we've included a number of recommendations in the plan, specifically kind of catered to what we heard from our Parks Department. And then we also have, as I mentioned before, worked with our Police Department, and a number of the recommendations included in there have come from some of the suggestions and input that we received from our police officer that regularly attends the BPAC meetings. So for the meeting tonight, as I mentioned, this is a public hearing. We do have a draft resolution for you to consider tonight. We did make a minor amendment to the resolution, the draft resolution that was in your packet, and that amendment is included at your desk. The amendment basically includes a reference to the downtown chapter or plan portion of the comprehensive plan that was not listed in the original draft that was in your packet. With that, Lee and I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you, too. I appreciate all the work. Any questions for either? Mr. Granlund.
I was curious if since you had it listed for the number of miles or linear measurements that you had for completed sections, is there a similar breakdown of what you might consider the deficits of each of the systems, the lack of sidewalk length or the lack of bike length available?
I don't have that figure handy, no. In terms of the two maps, the map 7 and 8 that show the sidewalk gaps, I haven't actually run a total on that. That would be fairly easy to do since we have it in our GIS system. The only part that would complicate that calculation a little bit is that on some of the maps what we do is we're showing the gaps that are not only within the city but also maybe extend into the townships. But we could come up with that number if you wanted to.
Okay. Yes, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ivory, thank you for your presentation, and Ms. Ness as well. I certainly appreciate all the work that's been put into this over the last few years, and certainly a lot of building off of the initial plan, and certainly the work of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We have some representatives here. I guess there's been a few things after reading this again in this latest draft that I wanted to ask about. One of them, I guess there's a few references on page 33 of the plan. The main one, I guess, is kind of about staff resources. Because there's a lot proposed in here, obviously, and we've had, we've certainly been able to accomplish a lot with the resources that we have, but kind of taking it to the next level, there is a paragraph right before it says planning and engineering, and I think the second sentence in that paragraph, it states, the task of implementing these strategies will occur incrementally over an extended time period due to budget constraints, limited staff resources, and multiple demands on staff time. So I guess my question was, do you see a plan like this ever laying out a plan for how to staff this work, or like a vision for what may be needed in terms of additional staff resources, or is that kind of a separate issue?
I guess the development of this, the goals and recommendations in this plan are based on what we foresee as current staffing levels, essentially, and generally current funding levels in terms of what we see each year for our CIP street construction projects. Or I guess our assumptions are that the number of streets or the miles of streets that are reconstructed each year is going to generally remain about the same from year to year, and that our staffing for this in terms of Leah's work and my work, or the work in my position, would kind of remain about the same, being that we do staff multiple committees and have other hats that we wear. So we're kind of anticipating that that on a yearly basis it'll continue what we've seen over the last couple of years. I would say that since the adoption of the original plan in 2010, as we've moved forward in the last few years, we've seen, I think, an incremental increase in terms of some of the improvements that are related to pedestrians and bicyclists within the city, whereas I think when we were first getting started back in 2010, it was probably a little bit slower. So I think that pace has increased, and just kind of what I foresee in some of the projects that we're talking about next year in 2020, you're going to see even more than that with our current staff capabilities.
Mind if I have a follow-up question to that?
Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I certainly am very impressed with what has been able to be accomplished with the folks we have working right now. and certainly with the volunteer time of our committee. I guess one of the references that makes me think about staff time, some of it starts to come down to the parts of our objectives that are related to education and encouragement and enforcement, where it's sort of like there's almost an unlimited amount of time you could spend on that. But one of them just before that section is on page 44 at the very top. There's a bullet under 13, sidewalk, pathway, and street maintenance. The first bullet on page 44 references something that we used to do as a community with regard to, well, I'll just read it. So it says, consider implementing a program where the condition of public sidewalks are periodically evaluated and then complete the necessary improvements. And then in parentheses it says, such a program was administered in the 1990s but eliminated due to budgetary issues. And presumably that's mostly staff time. That is the budgetary issue for being able to inspect the sidewalks on a regular basis. So I guess you foresee maybe a volunteer program being able to be implemented that could help with doing certain types of tasks like assessing sidewalk maintenance needs, or is that really a staff level objective?
Well, I might defer to Leah on that. My initial thought would be is that it'd be something that we probably would see that we would need to have staff be able to review that. I think we could probably possibly take advantage of some internship possibilities through the university. But I think it needs to be primarily monitored and watched over by staff.
I would agree. Right now our system, we are kind of complaint based. We do monitor as we're out on site. If we see something, we'll note to staff, or staff will provide feedback to our department regarding sidewalk issues that they've seen while they're out doing their daily work, or while they're out on the weekends or off work time too. So that's kind of our process right now, and then we have an individual that does inspection based off of those complaints or those comments that we receive.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any additional questions? I've got a real quick one for either of you. Do the towns have any similar policy on sidewalks, or are they no sidewalks, or how do, and for me, Hamilton Avenue is my neighborhood, and I know there's a lot of kids there now, and have a dangerous road without a sidewalk there, so.
We are working with the county and the townships on implementing sidewalks within, to meet those gaps, and we've had these maps with them and discussed in the past, but our policy right now is to include sidewalks on all streets. But I don't believe that the other locations or municipalities have that same policy, to my knowledge.
Thank you. Any other questions? Gregor.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Ivory, I was wondering, and we spoke about this a little bit this afternoon too. Page 38, there's number 4 among the engineering, planning and engineering objectives. There's the bicycle parking at public facilities category there, which I think is great. One thing I was thinking that's kind of come up since the last time we reviewed this plan on Plan Commission is we had a busy summer of special events and a lot of great stuff happening in the community. And I'm kind of thinking that special event bicycle parking might be something we want to look into as a community and work with special event committee. I'm not sure what the name of that is, but to see if for during the review of special events, that could be something that's thought about just as barricades or trash cans or whatever are considered for special events. So I guess my question would be, you think this section or bicycle parking at public facilities could include maybe a one-sentence reference to exploring special event bike parking as an area in need of study at the very least? Would that be appropriate thing for this plan?
I think that's something that could be added. There is a reference on page 51 and then item number 8 talks about coordination with downtown Eau Claire, and then the Healthy Communities Task Force, and talks about working with DECI in the promotion of walking and bicycling within the downtown area. And then also on the next page on 52, education and promotion talks about a number of things related to, again, promoting walking and bicycling. It doesn't specifically maybe make reference to what you had mentioned about a special event, but it kind of alludes to the fact of trying to make sure we provide adequate bike parking facilities for those kinds of events, basically to encourage people to attend those events. So.
I have a follow-up.
Please.
Almost more of a comment, but this summer certainly, I mean, downtown is certainly one place that we have a lot of events, and probably the biggest one that made me think of this was the Oxbow event, where we actually closed down a block of Galloway Street in front of the Lake Lee and Ramon's Ice Cream, and there was basically like there's some bike parking nearby, but there's 2,000 people or so coming to an event, and it could be something we could specifically work with event planners to have a specific location for bike parking. So it's just something I wanted to bring up and as an extra initiative, as if we don't have enough in this plan already. But thank you.
All right, great. Anybody else? This, I believe, is a public hearing. So if there's anybody here that'd like to come up and talk about it, please do. Come on up.
Hi. Hello. My name's Emily Berkey. I live at 3935 Charleston Drive in Eau Claire. And I told my neighbors, I should say I'm speaking here for my personal viewpoint, not representing council at all, of course, but just as a neighbor, I was, McKinley Road has been a concern with my neighbors, and I told them that this is on the agenda tonight, and they weren't able to make it. One person who I knew had a concern with it, I've talked to Blaine and Kayla. We've talked about it. Our kids go to the same school. So I told them, and Blaine was able to come, but then he had to leave early. So I thought, well, since no one else was able to come and speak, I wanted to put this on everyone's radar, that how dangerous McKinley Road is. And it's not I read through the packet, and lots of good info in this plan. I read through the safe routes to school, a lot of good info in there too, and I'm really appreciative of all that work, a lot of work. But I didn't see McKinley on there, so I just wanted to, again, just kind of put that on people's radar. It's a very dangerous road, and actually there's 2 schools on McKinley Road. There's Northwood School and the Charter School. And there is sidewalk going to Northwoods from the Princeton Valley area, but not past it. And there's a lot of children that ride their bikes on McKinley. I don't know if you've ever been on McKinley, but cars go fast, and there's a hill, and the shoulder is about that big, and it's just a very dangerous place for children and families. I've taken my kids down there to go downtown, to go to the farmer's market and such, and it's really scary. Just watch your kids on the bikes in front of you. I'm like, okay, stay to the right. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. I know it's a confusing place because their county is there in the town of Seymour, but I believe where their sidewalk is now, and outside of Princeton Valley to Northwoods. That's the town of Seymour and there's sidewalk there, so I'm hoping there a solution can be found. Again, and there's a lot of pedestrians that use it as well. A lot of people walk to that Quick Trip. And just this morning I was driving and someone was walking with their groceries on the side of the road. So again, if you're ever on McKinley, and you'll know it's not pedestrian friendly at all. So yeah, a lot of people do walk the road. And I know there's a teacher that works at Northwoods, and he walks from Seymour to work every day. And luckily he hasn't had, I'm sure he's had some close encounters, but so a lot of people do walk and ride their bikes, and yeah, that's my comment. So thank you.
One second.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
questions? Jeremy, go ahead.
And thank you, Ms. Berge, for your insight into that area of town. We also did receive a letter from the principal of McKinley Charter School on the subject too, which was great to see.
That was part of the packet that Blaine dropped off earlier, correct?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess my question was, we spoke a bit yesterday on the phone too, but I since found on page 39 there is a reference to McKinley Road south of Highway 312 as a sidewalk and pathway systems gap, one of the many bulleted locations. But I guess I was kind of wondering, do you feel that it kind of deserves its own, we kind of have this whole section of the plan that is titled Areas Requiring Detailed Study. There's 27 of them, and as Mr. Ivory indicated, there was some intention to limit that number because there are a lot of needs in our community in terms of this. But what do you feel as to whether this kind of deserves its number 28 for areas requiring detailed study?
Well, if that would help, I guess if that would help it get done, that would be great. I think it could be it is right off of the area what number was it? Number 4, 6, 9? South of 312.
Yeah.
Well, so it's similar to that. It's just kind of, but I also I want to, there are a lot of areas on there, so, and I don't want to say to put that on. I want to be careful of that as well. So, however it can get done, I know, like I said, my neighbors are interested in helping with this. If I can be a help of any way. I know Blaine has said that he's interested in helping, so I guess whichever way would be productive. If it means putting it on the list, great. But if it's just on your radar and if we can just make it happen, that's good too. So I feel like I probably didn't answer your question, but I'm flexible.
No, okay. Thank you.
I don't want to put more work on, so really I just want to say it's a dangerous road, and hopefully we can do something about it.
Goodness, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thanks a lot for coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else that'd like to talk to the plan? This is a public hearing, so here's your opportunity to talk for or against it. Okay, last chance. Anybody that'd like to come forward? Great, I'm not seeing anybody. So I think we'd be looking for a motion here to adopt the resolution as proposed by staff. Yes.
To adopt the resolution, I would like to potentially add a few details, I guess, into the plan as part of that motion. See if I can get a second for that. So the main one there's one actually related to on page 39, sidewalk/pathway system gaps, number 6 on that page. Just to add a bullet that references the Westover and State Street area as being a major sidewalk/pathway system gap, because yes, and we heard from Ms. Ness earlier that there was a reference to that as being a gap, but also just some recent development in that area I think has has really elevated the need there. So I think it needs kind of its own little bullet point on page 39. And then I would like to add a number 28 for areas requiring detailed study that includes McKinley Road. And I'm not sure the best way to do that because essentially it's adding a whole paragraph to be written about some of the needs in that area. But I think maybe if we could direct staff to write a paragraph that represents the needs that we've heard on McKinley, if that's appropriate.
Our resolution would be a recommendation with a couple additions. and
Yeah,
then
with
that
just a
would come
few
to council.
recommendations on top of that, yeah, essentially.
Just the two, Jeremy?
Those are just the two.
Okay.
So does that seem like?
Is that reasonable to you, Pat? Yeah. Okay. And do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Yes, discussion. Eric? Oh, sorry. All right, push the button, okay. Push the button first and then we'll one out.
There we go. Sorry
No.
about the confusion. So just as, I guess I have a question about that because the intersection of Westover and State Street is actually in the town of Washington. Most of Westover is in the city, but if you're talking about that intersection, that's actually in the town of Washington.
Right, respond.
I guess I'm looking at, I don't, you show up.
Yeah, in terms of the added bullet on that section, a number of the other intersections or streets that are listed are some within the city, some are combination city-town areas, so it doesn't necessarily, I mean, we as a city will try to do what we can to alleviate the problem, but by putting that bullet in there, it's just recognizing that that is an issue, so
Okay.
I wouldn't see that as a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion? Yes, Jeremy?
It's just speaking in favor of the motion that I just made. I do appreciate the feedback we've gotten on the McKinley Road needs just to speak in favor of adding number 28 for McKinley Road. I think, it sounds like there's interest in that neighborhood and among some of the partners that would be involved, like the schools, that it really has enough interest for the city to be able to work with a variety of people to make it happen. And I know the county is just completing their bicycle and pedestrian plan, and certainly McKinley Road is mostly within the county. So I guess it's just one of those opportunities to kind of put it out there as a priority area, maybe at a critical time. So that's why I included it.
I got one of the city's best advocates on board, so probably helps too. Any other discussion on the topic? All right, so we've got a motion with Westover Road and
An
a
additional
study
study area.
of McKinley.
Correct.
First and second on that. I don't see any other discussion. Let's call the question. All those in favor as amended? Oh, sorry, Terry?
I have a discussion. I didn't know there was a second to the motion.
There was. Craig seconded it. Yep,
Did he? Okay.
he did. And then we
With
discussed.
the additions?
Eric opened the discussion. Yep.
I have discussion.
Okay, let's.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from. I was formerly a WSDOT planning supervisor that served on the Metropolitan Planning Organization Bike Technical Committee. I probably haven't ridden a bike in 40 years. At my stage in life, I probably walked 3-4 blocks at the most, so I consider myself basically a motorist. There's federal, state, local funding for roads, trails, and sidewalks. Motorists also pay license fees, they pay registration fees, they pay gas taxes. In the 50s and 60s, now that's 50, 60 years ago, I paid a mandatory annual fee to the city of Eau Claire for a bike license. It was only 50 cents, but to a good deal, it was a good deal of money to a kid back then. The fire stations collected the fees, they registered the bike including the serial number, and issued a license which was displayed on the bike. Are there any special fees for bicyclists in the city of Eau Claire other than the DNR trail fees? Do you know of any?
The city does not have a bike license fee.
Okay, but no fees at all that are specifically for bicyclists?
Correct.
For their trails and the like. Now, trails, the marathons, the special running and walking events bring in tourism dollars to the city. Are those tourism dollars in return turned back to fund any trails that support this tourism?
I don't have an answer for that, Terry, but I do know that we have special event fee charges that go along with the special events. So to close a road down, there's a fee related to that, to the amount of barricades that are used for that special event. There's a related fee for that.
Okay,
so there is some monies that are generated by the special events that
But does any of
go back.
the money that comes into tourism for bicycle events or walking or running events go back into bicyclist facilities or walking or running facilities?
I'm not sure on the tourism dollars if they are returned at
Okay.
all.
Is there any city ordinance concerning biking and walking and texting?
No, in our research, when we put together the plan, we have found that there are some communities across the country that are looking at ordinances related to walking and texting. I don't know if those actually have been adopted or not, but they are being looked at.
Living on the south side, up on the South Hill and coming down the State Street Hill and going through the university environs, as I go through there to downtown or to the north side, I see a lot of students texting on the sidewalks, which is fine. But when I see them texting as they're crossing the street, it really raises a concern for me that they are not aware of their surroundings. I'm trying to watch out for them, but they've got to watch out for themselves too. In the data that you provided with previous accident and crashes that have gone over the past 4 years, I think were in the study, was there any indication who was in the wrong, whether it was the motorist or the bicyclist or the pedestrian? Is that data available?
That data is available through our crash report system. We don't have it compiled as a whole.
Okay, it'd be interesting to see who was in the wrong in those. With education and enforcement, their safety programs talk about the rights and the duties and safety. They talk about proper etiquette. One of the things I've seen in traveling through the university area is students tend to stay back from the curb until they're ready to cross the street, which I appreciate as a motorist. If they're standing right at the curb line, I don't know whether they're ready to cross or not. In my experiences in Nevada, where they enforce pedestrian laws to the utmost, when I've had friends with me and I've been leading them, I have backed up from the street. So I'm not looking to a motorist like I'm going to cross the street, because in Nevada, if you get up to the curb line, they stop, and that's enforcement. As far as PSAs on local commercial TV, mind you, the cable TV network, I don't know if it's necessarily watched by that many people with community TV, but it'd be interesting if it could be on local commercial TV, such as the local public, the local commercial stations. PSAs on there concerning bike and peds and motorists would probably get to more people. I've read in the past about the police department monitoring motorists at crosswalks in the newspaper, but I've never read about the police department monitoring any bicyclists and pedestrians and their activities, especially concerning driving or bicycling after dark without lights on. The study talks about, or the plan talks about common motorist violations that endanger bicyclists, but it doesn't talk about common bicyclist violations that endanger themselves, such as rolling through stop signs, stopping for but then ignoring red lights. John is not here tonight, but he and I both witnessed at Farwell Street and Main Street on our going to a Plan Commission meeting. 2 bicyclists driving north on Farwell Street stopped at a red light and then proceeded through the red light as if it meant nothing to them. One thing I did not know until reading this report of the plan, that pedestrians can stop at a red light, a traffic signal. They then can proceed across the street as long as they're not an impediment to any motorist traffic. I did not know that. I observed that at the university stoplights. One of my big problems with bicyclists is them riding at night without legal lights. They're very hard to see. I've seen a couple on Water Street, and if I'm parked on Water Street and I open my driver's door, I don't see that light behind me that they're coming. Or if I'm coming from a side street, I'm looking for headlights because I'm looking beyond parked cars. And if they are not driving on their bicycles with lights, they're extremely hard to see. I think if a motorist can see that the laws are enforced fairly, they will have a better tendency to obey the laws themselves with respect to pedestrians and bicyclists. On a side point, the Hawk at Menominee Street. The plan talks about other Hawks on mid-block. Technically, I don't feel that the Hawk at Menominee Street is not at an intersection because technically there's an intersection with a trail in Menominee Street there. So it's really at an intersection, it's not mid-block. In summary, I feel I am vigilant driving around bicyclists and pedestrians, especially when overtaking bicyclists. 99% of the time I yield to pedestrians, but sometimes I am forgetful or I'm warily watching other vehicles in the area. I do actually look left and right when I get the green light at a stoplight. I look left and right because there's other motorists that aren't following the law specifically. But most importantly, I feel that a bicyclist or pedestrian may be in the right in an accident, but they're the ones that are probably going to get injured the most. So that's my comments, and I'd like to pass this on to Terry and to Jeremy and to the staff to take to the City Council next week. And any questions you have of me.
Well said. Thanks, Terry. Okay, so we do have a motion, a second, and we're at comments. Anybody, additional comments? Mr. Weld.
We're still on the amendment, aren't we? Was there an actual amendment?
His motion had 2 amendments to the resolution from.
Were we voting on the amendment separate from the resolution or no?
He made that as part of his initial motion,
see,
which
okay.
was seconded.
All right, thank
So
you.
we're discussing under that.
Okay,
I got that right?
correct.
Yeah, okay. So, any additional comments? Okay, how about we call the question here? Well, let's get this, the resolution as drafted by staff, plus the addition of the bullet point for
Yeah, the two.
gaps on, which way was it?
Well, the 2 additional, the additional study area, 28 for McKinley, and then the intersection of Westover and State
Okay,
as a bullet point.
okay. Okay, so let's call the question. All those in favor as proposed, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Thanks, everybody, for all that work. Right, I guess that takes us to item number 2. Public hearing for recommendation, rezoning of the, Valley Media Works applicant of location at 559 North Hastings Way. Ms. Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Good evening. Before you is a rezoning from public to C3, located at 559 North Hastings Way, the former fire station on Hastings Way. Valley Reading Works, who's broadcasting this, is the applicant. They have accepted offer from the city council. They went through the request for proposals, RFP process for the property, and have agreed for a purchase agreement. With that purchase agreement, though, noted the zoning which shall be changed to C3. To the north of the site is industrial zoning. That's the U-Haul site, along with the school district office and building. To the east is C2 zoning, which is a repair shop. To the west is Hastings Way, but then there's a tavern across the Hastings Way, and to the south is C3 zoning. Staff believes that the C3 zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The land use change is appropriate for commercial, given Hastings Way corridor. This item will be considered by the City Council at its next meeting on December 10th. With that being said, I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for Mr. Petrie? Any? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Granlund.
I did review the differences of what's allowable under C3 versus C2, and I didn't memorize it, but could you briefly point out the differences of what's either allowed or permitted under the two zonings?
Sure. Typically under the C2, you're talking a little less density, a little less impactful commercial. With the C3, you're talking a little more density, a little more impactful commercial standards. Staff looked at the proposal. With not having access actually onto Hastings Way, but being along Hastings Way corridor, we felt that C3 would be more appropriate and a little more flexibility with the land uses. I would note too, in the packet, they have blocked off, the green area here has been removed. I was out on site about 2 weeks ago. That driveway has been removed. They removed some paving that's in the front yard, which shown on here. They did remove all that. That was actually in the right of way along Hastings Way, so.
All right, great. Mr. Peterson.
The access that was removed to Birch Street will stay removed from Birch
That is
Street?
correct.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Is the applicant here? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here that'd like to come forward to talk about this item? Public hearing, so if there's anybody that would like to discuss this, then now's your opportunity. Okay, I guess I'm not seeing any, so we'd be looking for a motion. Yes, Mr. Granlund. Okay. Terry? All right, Terry Peterson seconded. Got a motion and a second with recommendations. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Congratulations. Right, item number 3, public hearing for recommendation, rezoning at Banbury Place. Mr.
Thank
Petrie.
you. Before you is a rezoning from I-2P, I-1P to I-2P, and to amend the general development plan for multifamily potentially to be added to Building 17 located at 800 Wisconsin Street. Building 17 is the far east building at Banbury Place. The applicant did provide a narrative with the current development plan that was approved 26 years ago by the Plan Commission and City Council. Building 17 is a 6-story building consisting of 182,000 square feet of gross floor area. The City of Eau Claire currently stores things there from the move from City Hall. Most of the building, or actually all of the building, is used for warehouse storage at this time. Office use could be appropriate right now. The applicant and owner would like to add potentially multifamily to that building. Again, currently the structure is occupied with warehouse storage. Per the zoning, I2P, I did provide the mixed use plan development ordinance that was adopted by council 26 years ago, talking about large scale older use of buildings. The commission may approve with a plan development overlay district such as proposed. The comprehensive plan shows this area as mixed use. Under the definition of mixed use category, the proposed land use to include multifamily potentially would be appropriate if the Plan Commission and City Council agree. The mixed-use category classifies as a mixture of commercial and medium to high-density residential on the same site. Staff believes that this rezoning amendment to the general development plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and with the zoning ordinance, as well as the original development plan, which did include some multifamily on the site. This agenda item, again, will go forward to City Council on December 10th. A final site plan will be reviewed by the Plan Commission at a later date. Again, in your packet is the narrative provided by the applicant. City Council and staff did receive an email describing affordable housing and concerns about that. I will let the applicant describe what he's proposing. I believe potentially this would be an affordable housing project, but I'll let him touch base on that. Staff would recommend approval of the request, and with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks. Any questions, Mr. Granlund?
I did not see that there was actually any I-1P as part of the plan. It's part of the description on the other page, but actually the title list is I-2 and I-2P.
Yes.
All I-2P and no I-1P looks to be involved.
I believe, and Pat might want to verify, but I think there somewhere on this site, I think it's right here, there is some overlay of I-1P, if I remember correctly. Pat, do you remember by any chance?
The caption at the bottom of the screen does not include any I-1P.
It was my recollection that it was I-2 and I-2P.
Okay, so that would be an error.
The description on the other page needs editing. But
yes, we will change that for City Council.
Great. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thanks, Ryan. Is the applicant here? Showing up?
Good evening. I'm Jack Kaiser, reside at 3004 Agnes Street in Eau Claire. I don't want to duplicate what Ryan has indicated, but it is amazing. I feel that it's been 26 years since we've come in front of the Plan Commission with the change to the Banbury Place and what's happened down there. We are just, as Ryan indicated, Building 17 currently is approved for use of warehouse and office. With all the activities going on downtown Eau Claire, we're just considering looking at multifamily to be part of that particular building. We do have multifamily at Banbury, Building 16, which was approved back 26 years ago. It's International Harvester Apartment Homes. We have 35 apartments down there, and they're continuously full. We envision this to be multi-use building with apartments and offices and even possibly some interior warehouse space. That all has to be determined. We're just trying to get ahead of the game and ask for approval so we can consider multifamily in that building in the future. What type of housing it'll be, whether it's market rate or affordable, low income, I have no idea. We haven't got that far yet. We just want yours and the City Council's permission to take the next step to investigate to see if it's indeed possible. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll sure answer them.
Great, thanks. Any questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Grant. Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Kaiser, for all of your work on this over the 26 years and more. Yeah, really excited to kind of hear a little bit more from you, however, on the if you do have any thoughts about affordable housing and how what your vision would be if you like, and what the timeline may be if to be able to make that decision as to how feasible it would be to include affordable housing.
I wish I could tell you. I don't know, and I'll be honest with you, I know very, very little about affordable housing and what the rules and regulations are. I'm more into the commercial and industrial end of things. So I wish I could tell you, Jeremy. I just can't.
Okay.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, this is a public hearing, so if there's anybody here that'd like to discuss this item, now is your opportunity. This is a public hearing, so if there's anybody here that'd like to talk on this item. Last chance. Okay, I guess nobody here to discuss. We'd be looking for a motion. Yes, Eric. All right, we got a motion. Second. Any discussion? Seen any? Okay, so let's call the question. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Good luck. Item number 4, public discuss, formal recommendation annexation of Highway 53, east of Highway 53 and south of I-94, Wisconsin DOT. Speaker.
Yes, an annexation petition has come in from WSDOT. It's located on the southeast side of Eau Claire. On the map, it's currently in the town of Washington. They're proposing annexing 35.8 acres of vacant land from the town of Washington to the city of Eau Claire. WSDOT does own the 2 parcels to the northwest, which are currently inside the city limits. The remaining parcel is not inside the city at this time. The parcel is within the SSA service sewer area for the city of Eau Claire. Sanitary sewer and water are available along Highway 53. The parcel is adjacent to the city to the west and to the northwest. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I would note the proposed zoning would be TR1A. Plan Commission and City Council will review the development proposal after it becomes inside the city. This item would be considered at the December 11th City Council meeting on Tuesday. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on this item for Ms. Petrie? I'm not seeing any. All right, thank you. Is the applicant here? All right. Sorry, is the applicant here tonight? Seen that. So this again is for public discussion. So if there's anybody that would like to discuss the annexation, now's your opportunity. Last chance to discuss the annexation. All right, I'm not seeing anybody. Let's, I guess we're looking for a motion then. Yes, Terry. And Craig. All right, Terry and Craig. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? And let's call the question. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Item number 5, street vacation. Is that Schwenke Street? It's not Schwenke Street. Yes.
Thank you. Before you, the city received a petition to vacate the Schwenk Street from 50 feet west of Welch Court to 20 feet from the top of bank of the Chippewa River. This is a diagram showing it's just located north of the North Crossing. In your packet, there is a little history regarding the right-of-way plat and how it was, the process that we've come to today and how it was given back to the city. Our current action is to vacate a portion of the returned segment of right-of-way. There's no public utilities located within the right-of-way. There may be some private utilities located. The standard resolution language for the vacation of public right-of-way retains utility easements. With this particular vacation, staff would also plan to bring a companion resolution to City Council to eliminate the utility easement. The vacation of this segment of Schwenk Street appears to be in the best interest of both parties. It maintains land to allow for partial or potential future trail connections through the area. And engineering staff recommends the approval of the right-of-way vacation. Any questions related to this?
Thank you. Any questions? All right, I'm not seeing any. It's in the city's the applicant, I assume, correct? So, okay. And then this is okay, this is public discussion, so, okay. All right, this is a public hearing on this one. If there's anybody here that would like to discuss this item, please come forward. Anybody here that'd like to discuss? All right, I'm not seeing anybody here. We'd be looking for a motion. Yes, Mr. Granlund. Motion and a second, Terry? All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right, great, thanks. Another street vacation, this time on Gibson Street. Ms. Ness.
The city received a petition to vacate Gibson Street from Graham Avenue to the Chippewa River. The petition has been signed by the owners of the frontage lots and the lands abutting the proposed right-of-way to be discontinued. The proposed vacation does include a multi-use trail corridor adjacent to the Chippewa River Trail, and we would have a condition that the trail corridor be deeded back to the city as a parcel. No public utilities are located within the proposed vacated area. Private utilities may be in the area. I had mentioned on the last item that the resolution language for right-of-way vacation typically retains easement, utility easements, and in the packet we'd like to make a correction that staff would recommend keeping that language with the vacation, maintaining the utility easement with the vacation. So we would not bring a separate item to City Council to eliminate that utility easement. An ingress and egress easement will be maintained to access the river and the multi-use trail along the riverbank, and then also we would ask for a visual easement as well. There is potential development on the parcels south of Gibson Street. And I guess I have another map here that shows the area of vacation. Right now, there is a loading dock that has an easement, an existing easement, and there is also generator easement that is within the proposed vacated area. The visual easement is kind of in response to the loading dock, and the loading dock has been built to maintain that visual access to the river, so we'd like to potentially continue that visual easement similar to what is existing and how the existing buildings have been designed. Staff recommends approval of the right-of-way vacation with the retaining of the utility easement, the ingress, egress, and then the visual easement as stated. Any questions?
All right. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, there's potential conflicts with Commonweal here, so I will not participate in discussion or voting on this item. But I'm sorry, Terry, you had a question?
Vacation, it's just that we're vacating it as public right-of-way and then it can go for sale.
The public right-of-way would go back to the property owners.
Okay, do you know if this is split between the two property owners in that it looks like the property to the north has some need to still maintain access through here for some of their facilities, the loading dock and the...
Correct.
You know if the right-of-way is split 50-50 between the two?
The right-of-way would be split equally between the two, correct.
Is there any adverse impact with the loss of parking that's on that street? Only 2-hour parking, but...
It's 2-hour parking, and right now, the loading dock, we lost parking with the loading dock being along the north side of Gibson Street. On the south side, there's a couple stalls. With the potential redevelopment to the south, parking related to that facility may be maintained within there, or they may have alternatives for parking on their private property at that point.
Because parking seems to be at a premium in that area.
Correct.
So it'd be, hate to lose it even if it's 2-hour parking.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mr. Weld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The ingress and regress more than likely then would probably come after the development of that southern lot, and do you see that being along that southern line of, or that southern edge of Gibson Street?
I would see that being on the southern edge, south of the loading dock. The ingress egress is really for maintenance vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians to get from Graham Avenue to the river trail.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Snessa, I was wondering, this ingress egress access between, assuming it goes all the way between Graham Avenue and the river trail, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I guess a follow-up to that is how wide you foresee that to be able to accomplish maintenance vehicles as well as people walking and biking between those two streets, or between Graham Avenue and the trail?
Right now, the area being vacated is 66 feet. The loading dock, the encroachment for the loading dock is 33 feet. So there's 33 feet to the southern portion. We'd have to maintain a width for vehicle access to the trail. I don't anticipate a lot of maintenance activity having to use that trail connection. There are alternative trail connections to use or access for maintenance vehicles as well, but I would expect at least a 12-foot area for a vehicle to travel from Gibson to the trail.
Follow up?
Yeah, I have another question.
Please.
Thank you. This is related to the view corridor that I believe is in some of the plans for downtown. Indicates the desire to have views from like down the street to be able to see the river, or at least see across the river. Mm-hmm. So how exactly is that defined in terms of what is considered a good view? I know that there's the loading dock that had a fence added to it that maybe wasn't anticipated, so I just don't want to see that eroded too much. So how does that being defined in terms of a height limit of things, or parking restrictions or things like that?
We talked about that as staff today internally, the visual sight lines, and are looking at doing some survey and identifying that further. So there would be some guidelines that would be presented related to the visual corridor.
Any additional questions for Ms. Ness? Oh, Jeremy, you're on a roll, man.
Just one more, thank you. This is, I guess, related to a question about if there was going to be any money exchanged hands, I guess, to the city in this. Has it ever been the case, or how exactly would that work if we were to how do we actually make something like that happen? Is that at this stage or is that later in terms of if the property owners that this is being given to or to be asked for maybe an assessed value of that land? I guess I'm not totally sure what I'm asking, but basically, does the city actually ever get any payment in these cases of a street vacation like this?
I think in this situation right now, the street has been torn apart, and as a part of the vacation, the easement and maintaining that access, the development of that area would have to be improved to maintain that access. So that would be considered a portion of the payment or the payment for the vacation.
Okay.
And then actually, with a street vacation, the city doesn't actually own this property, it's public right away.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not like we're selling it, we're vacating it, so there's really not a sale transaction that occurs.
Terry?
Do you know if the city acquired it as a deed, or is it under highway easement or roadway easement?
I don't have that information.
If it was roadway easement, the underlying property would go to the adjoining properties. If it's warranty deed, then if they wanted to take possession, let's say, of the south 33 feet to develop that property to the south, then I think they'd have to assess it at fair market value, and that's what the city would be paid for that underlying property. And I don't know if that's where Jeremy was leading or not. The land underneath could have some value, that the city would indeed incur some money with the sale of that property after the vacation.
We can follow up on that, Terry.
Okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any, thanks. And this would be a public discussion. We're the city's the applicant? Yes, okay, so if there's anybody here that'd like to discuss this item, now's your opportunity. Public discussion, anybody here that'd like to discuss? So I guess we'd be looking for a motion. Mr. Brennan. Sorry.
I'll move recommendation.
Yes. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess perhaps Ms. Ness could help me understand this. I guess what are the plans for the corridor in terms of and the adjacent property to the south that are kind of driving this? Is that something you could explain a bit more?
The driver kind of behind this is the use of the area next to the Gibson Street area, the use of it. Right now, the Arts Center has Visit Eau Claire located in the southern section of the building that is adjacent to Gibson Street. They have asked for some potential street use. There's the loading zone there that has parking and access with the loading zone. So that is a use of the area. As a city, maintaining the pedestrian flow between the trail and Gibson Street is really our main concern. There was access on the south side to the south property, but that is the only other access off of Gibson Street in that area.
Your question?
Yeah, I guess maybe a follow-up question to that is do you foresee any sort of driveway access being used to access the property to the south from Gibson Street, or with the future development, or?
I would potentially see a driveway access from the south, yes, to access that property.
So potentially a traffic, like a source of increased traffic to a private.
It's a private drive.
Yeah.
A private lot.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Are you satisfied?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
okay. Any additional comments, questions? We have a motion and a second. I guess we'd be calling the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. We got one opposed. Okay, thanks. All right. Did you catch that? Okay. Item number 7, public discussion for recommendation. Trail easement, Highclere Estates 2. Ms. Ness?
The property owner of the preliminary Highclere Estates 2 plat has agreed to permit an easement for a future trail. This would allow access from the Highclere area development to North Star Middle School. The easement would be located along the southern edge of Lot 65. It's one of the flatter locations throughout this area, and it would allow for future trail construction by either the city or the school. This is consistent with opportunities identified in the Safe Routes to School plan for North Star Middle School, and this is in response to a recent development agreement with Independence Park 8, which looked at creating a Princeton Parkway, which would be a trail connection between Princeton Valley, Highclere, and the school district. Engineering staff recommends the approval of the trail easement. Any questions?
All right, any questions? Not seeing any. Thanks a lot. This one is, again, a public item, so if there's anybody here that would like to discuss this item for a guest, now's your opportunity. Yes, there we go.
Thank you. I'm Janet Fraze, and I live at 2516 East Princeton Valley. And I just am here to say thank you to the developers of Highclere for extending that, because that very much adds to the park and the trail system that was recently approved for the Princeton Valley, or the Independence Park, otherwise known as Princeton Valley area. So we're very appreciative of that. I just had one other comment. We worked since 1979, when that was first developed, to get a park. And there was recent criticism in the newspaper, a letter to the editor, that actually criticized the council's decision to approve that park and called Princeton Valley a suburb. So I just hope that the Planning Commission does not consider our neighborhood a suburb. We are very much a neighborhood of Eau Claire. So thank you. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Anybody else that'd like to discuss the trail easement? All right, I'm not seeing any. So I think we're looking for a motion. Yes, Terry. All right, got a motion. Jeremy has a second. Great. Any discussion? I'm not seeing. Let's call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Thanks. Now we're on to item 8, site plan, 131 South Barstow, Pablo Properties.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is a site plan to change a land use to include residential for a building at 131 South Barstow Street, also known as the U.S. Bank Building in downtown Eau Claire. Currently, the parcel is zoned CBD, which is Central Business Zoning. Attached in your packet is the narrative, floor plans, and site plan for the project. The narrative explains the project with the existing land use and the proposed land use. Again, currently the bank occupies the first and second floor of the building. The remaining spaces are 4 tenants on the third, fifth, and sixth floor, with approximately a square footage of 4,600 square feet of office space. The remaining building is vacant. The applicant would like to have the possibility of changing it to a mixed-use commercial and the flexibility to allow for residential. With their proposal, the bank would remain in place but downsize to 36,000 square feet. The remaining floors would change from office to 17 residential units for a total square footage of 20,638 square feet. The floor plan in your packet and on the screen shows a mixture of 6 one-bedroom units, 10 two-bedroom units, and the top floor would be a penthouse. Future plan for the bank potentially would show office space and potentially a conversion to a restaurant and additional office space. With this request, actually the parking requirement decreases. The reason being is because 36,000 square foot of office space is about 70 parking stalls. With the proposed residential use, it's about 27 stalls. The current parking on site has 25 stalls. The gypsum wrap is attached directly to the property. The site would need to add additional bicycle parking and the dumpster enclosure area. The facade of the building will remain the same and preserve the historic landmark Art Deco architecture feature of the building. The only other proposal would be potentially in the future to add a green roof and rooftop dining on the second story. With that proposal, we have a couple conditions. Additional parking shall be added again and the dumpster enclosure. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Petrie? Yes, Terry.
To the north side or the northwest side?
Yes, sir, there is. I did forget that. They are adding windows to the north side, which currently has no windows.
Yep. Okay.
Any additional questions? Greg.
I think that at one point this was, it was 2 buildings on 2 adjacent parcels. It's true that the parcels have been combined. That wall in the past had been a firewall between 2 adjacent properties, which, by the way, did not have windows. I want to be sure that we're not giving approval for something that falls under the building code, but I wouldn't be against it if there's no building code restriction on the windows.
The applicant may know that. I know they've been working with an architecture firm out of Minneapolis. Also, our building inspector would review that with a building permit.
And Ryan, that our approval wouldn't supersede any of the building code stuff.
That is correct.
All right, thanks. Terry Peters.
I think the windows would be on the upper stories, to which there's no building on the north side of the first 2 stories.
I believe that's correct, yes.
It would be the upper 4 stories, and there wouldn't be any firewall on those 4 stories, I don't think. But you're the architect, so.
If there is a division there, then it needs to be maintained, but that's,
okay.
again, done by building code, not by this committee.
Sounds good. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Petrie, I was wondering, do you have any other detail as to where the additional bike parking may be placed, or if it'll be outdoor or indoor, and the number of bike parking locations that will be required under this?
I do not. I know there's currently bicycle parking on site, but with the addition of residential, I believe there'd be a more need. They could put it adjacent to the parking lot. Based on the requirement of 27 stalls, that'd be 3 more. I think currently they have 2, so they potentially would have to add 1 more. The applicant is here, that may be able to answer that question farther.
All right, thank you.
All right, any additional questions? Thanks a lot. Is the applicant here? Come on up.
Thank you for having us. And Jeremy, just to go ahead and address the parking for, sorry, Therese Purcell with Pablo Management at 312 South Barstow. What we're looking at is we can either propose it in the parking lot and or on the streets where it's Eau Claire and Barstow. There is a larger, somewhat of a plaza with current benches and everything else that could go ahead and have those 3 additional bicycle parking ramps.
Great. Anything to add to the staff presentation or any comments on the conditions? Any concerns on that?
Nope. We will make sure that we enclose the garbage area and add whatever bicycle parking that we need. So, no, everything was
Any
perfect.
questions for the applicant? Yes, Jeremy.
Mr. Chair, thanks for being here. I guess I was kind of wondering, with the hotel being across the street, are you foreseeing any flexibility in your plans to be able to include hotel rooms instead of apartments, or are you foreseeing that changing over time? Because I understand you're looking at the flexibility of having a restaurant and other uses and potentially a mixed use building. So I just kind of wanted to hear a bit about what you see the future holding beyond maybe what you're planning right now.
Yeah, absolutely. At this time, no, we're just looking at the residential and, the current tenant that's occupying the majority of the square footage to be there. And then whenever there is going to be a transition at that point, at that time, it would transition to office and a restaurant, but not looking at continuous. However, obviously, things do change, and if Julie wants to add anything to that, she certainly can, but at this point, no, we do not foresee that.
I'd just like to add that this is seeking approval for our intended residential use, and currently there are tenants in those spaces. So this is prior to purchase, finding out if we are allowed to do our intended use for the building, and don't want to freak out any of the current tenants.
So it's going to stay as is until everything is situated.
Any additional questions? Craig?
Not wanting to get anybody excited about this too much. I appreciate your comment on that. Is there any thoughts about this potentially being condos rather than apartments, or is the plan for apartments? And I may be looking further down the road than you want to look, but
I would say our interest in this building is the historical relevance and beauty of the building, and we're really excited to be its next stewards. And I think that the best way to do that is in single ownership by our company and not condoing.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, this is, well, I guess this is not a public hearing, but if there's anybody here that would like to discuss it, I'm not seeing any. So let's, I guess we'll just go ahead and look for a motion. Yes, Craig.
Yeah, I'll move approval.
Okay,
With
great.
staff recommendations.
Yep. Second. All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? So let's call the question. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Congratulations. Good luck. All right, that takes us to discussion and direction. Any code compliance items? Yes, Craig.
Yeah, I don't know if this falls under this category or not, but I've been to a couple of events at the Pablo Center, and the new footbridge that goes across has not, I walked it once in the dark, and the other event I've observed it's still dark. It seems like there's a safety issue there. Is there any reason why that hasn't been lit, or is there any plans for temporary lighting?
We now have energy to the bridge, and we are working on getting the lighting. A portion of the lighting is connected, and hopefully we can have some lights on there shortly.
Great, thank you.
Any other code compliance items? Future agenda items?
Our December 17th meeting will be canceled. We don't have any items for that particular meeting.
Great.
And also our scheduled meeting for New Year's Eve has been canceled. We don't have any items for that meeting either.
Good work.
So this is a see you in 2019?
Yes, see you next
year.
Correct.
There we go.
I also have an announcement too. Volunteer appreciation breakfast will be January 9th, 2019 at 7:30 to 8:30 at Hobbs Ice Arena. You guys have been invited in the past, and they'll send out an email next week inviting you officially. But I wanted to announce that.
It's a good event to attend. Okay. Any other items? Additions or corrections to the minutes? None? All right. I guess it takes us to the end. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.